My husband refused to be intimate with me for over a year and blamed it on me reminding him of my abusive mother. But when I demanded specifics, he shut down completely. Then his sudden personality change was exposed as fake when his brother revealed he was just scared of divorce. I am Gloria, 32F, and I have been married to Walter, 34M, for 5 years. We have a son together who is 3 years old. Walter works as an IT manager at a mid-sized company, and I work part-time at a pharmacy near our house. We live in a decent apartment in the suburbs, and on paper, everything looks fine. But things have not been fine for a long time now. When we first got married, we had a good physical relationship. We were intimate almost every day, or at least every other day. But somewhere around the time our son turned 2, things started changing. It became less frequent. Then it became once a week. Now it happens maybe once every 2 weeks, or sometimes even longer gaps. And the worst part is that it only happens when he wants it. He initiates everything. If I try to initiate anything, he finds excuses. He says he is tired from work, or he has a headache, or he just ate too much dinner. I started noticing this pattern about 1.5 years ago. At first, I thought maybe he was just stressed with work. His company was going through some restructuring, and he was worried about his position. So I gave him space and did not push. But the restructuring ended, and he kept his job with even a small raise, yet nothing changed between us. If anything, it got worse. I tried to bring it up several times. Each time, I would wait for a good moment when we were both relaxed, maybe on a weekend morning or after our son went to bed. I would say something like we needed to talk about our relationship or ask if everything was okay between us. Every single time he would get this uncomfortable look on his face. He would say everything was fine and then find a reason to leave the room. He would suddenly remember he needed to check something on his laptop, or he would say he was going to take a shower. The conversation would just end before it even started. This went on for months. I kept trying and he kept avoiding. I started feeling worse about myself. I wondered if maybe I had gained too much weight after having our son. I looked at myself in the mirror more often and picked apart every part of my body. I started wearing makeup around the house even though I never used to bother. I bought new clothes that I thought made me look better. Nothing made any difference. The few times we were intimate during this period, I could not enjoy it. I kept thinking about how long it had been since the last time. I kept wondering when the next time would be. I felt like I was just there for his convenience, like I was something he used when he felt like it and ignored the rest of the time. And that feeling made everything worse. I need to give some background about my family situation because it becomes important later. My mother has always been difficult. She has a way of making everything about herself. When I was growing up, nothing I did was ever good enough for her. If I got good grades, she would say I could have done better. If I wore something nice, she would point out how it did not suit me. She constantly compared me to other kids in our neighborhood. She would tell me how so-and-so's daughter was smarter or prettier or more talented. I moved out of my parents' house the day I turned 18. I lived with roommates through college and then got my own small studio apartment after graduation. I kept my distance from my mother as much as I could, but she would still call me multiple times a week. The calls always followed the same pattern. She would complain about my father or about her health or about her neighbors. Then she would criticize something about my life. My job was not good enough. My apartment was too small. I was not visiting her enough. About 2 years ago, my father died from a sudden heart attack. After that, my mother became even more demanding. She expected me to visit her every week. When I did visit, she would spend the entire time either crying about how alone she was or picking apart every aspect of my life. Walter never wanted to come with me on these visits. He said my mother made him uncomfortable, so I would go alone with our son. The visits always left me drained. I would come home and just want to lie down. My mother had a way of making me feel small and worthless. Even though I knew logically that I was an adult with my own life, being around her made me feel like I was still that kid who could never do anything right. So back to my marriage. After more than a year of trying and failing to have a real conversation with Walter, I reached a breaking point. It was a Saturday evening. Our son was at my brother's place for a sleepover. I told Walter we needed to talk, and we were not going to avoid it this time. I said I could not continue living like this. I said our physical relationship had become non-existent, and I needed to know why. He looked uncomfortable like always. He tried to say we could talk about it later. I said no. I said we were talking about it right now. I told him I was not moving from the couch until he gave me a real answer. He sat there for a long time without saying anything. Then finally he said that sometimes I acted like my mother. He said especially after I visited her, I would come back and act just like her. He said it was a turnoff for him. That was the word he used, turnoff. I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. Out of all the things he could have said, that was the worst possible thing. I have spent my entire adult life trying not to be like my mother. I have been working on setting boundaries with her. I have been trying to break free from all the ways she made me feel bad about myself. And here was my husband telling me I was just like her. I asked him what he meant. I asked him to give me specific examples of how I acted like her. I said I needed to know what behaviors he was talking about so I could understand and maybe change them. He immediately shut down. He said he did not want to talk about it anymore. He said I was making a big deal out of nothing. He told me to just drop it. I did not drop it. I said he could not throw something like that at me and then refuse to explain. I said he owed me more than that. He stood up from the couch and said he was done with the conversation. He went into our bedroom and closed the door. I sat there on the couch by myself for over an hour. The next few days were tense. We barely spoke to each other. We only talked about things related to our son or basic household stuff. I kept thinking about what he had said. I went through every interaction I had with him after visiting my mother. I could not figure out what he meant. Did I complain too much? Did I criticize him? Did I compare him to other people? I genuinely could not see it. I tried to bring it up again a few days later. I said we needed to work through this together. He said there was nothing to work through. He said if I stopped visiting my mother so often, things would get better. I said I could not just abandon my mother. She was alone now after my father died. He said that was my choice then. That was the end of the conversation. I felt stuck. On one side, I had a husband who would not communicate with me and who blamed our problems on me but refused to explain how. On the other side, I had a mother who needed support, but who also made me miserable every time I saw her. I started having trouble sleeping. I would lie in bed next to Walter and stare at the ceiling for hours. I called my brother one night after Walter fell asleep. My brother is 4 years younger than me. He lives about 40 minutes away and works as a mechanic. We have always been close. He is the only person in my family who really understands what growing up with our mother was like. I told him everything that was happening with Walter. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he said Walter sounded like he was making excuses. He said maybe Walter just was not interested anymore and was blaming me to avoid taking responsibility. He said, I deserved better than this. After that phone call, I started looking at my marriage differently. I started noticing other things I had been ignoring, like how Walter would spend most of his free time playing video games in the bedroom while I took care of our son, or how he never helped with cooking or cleaning without me asking him multiple times, or how he would make plans to meet his friends without checking with me first, but would get annoyed if I wanted to do anything on my own. I also started noticing how I had shrunk myself to fit into this marriage. I stopped reading books because Walter said I always had my nose in a book and was not paying attention to him. I stopped talking to some of my friends because he said they were a bad influence. I stopped doing a lot of things I used to enjoy because somehow, over the years, I had learned to just go along with whatever he wanted. 2 weeks after our failed conversation, I found myself sitting on the bathroom floor at 2 in the morning. I had gotten up to use the bathroom and just ended up sitting there on the cold tiles. I looked at the closed bathroom door and realized I did not want to go back to bed. I did not want to lie there next to someone who saw me as a problem to be managed rather than a partner to be loved. That night, I made a decision. I started looking at my options. I calculated how much money I had in my personal savings account. I looked up rental prices in different areas. I made a list of what I would need to do if I decided to leave. I did not tell Walter any of this, but I started preparing mentally for the possibility that my marriage might be over. Update 1. The last 6 weeks have been strange. After I wrote my original post, I spent a few days reading all the comments and messages. A lot of people told me to leave. Some people said I should try couples counseling. A few people said I was overreacting. But reading everyone's perspectives helped me see my situation more clearly. I realized I had been making excuses for Walter for a long time. I realized I had been accepting treatment that I should not have been accepting. I decided I was going to leave. I did not tell Walter this, but I started making concrete plans. I looked at apartments in the city where my brother lives. I found a few that were in my budget. I started packing small things that Walter would not notice were missing. I put aside important documents like our son's birth certificate and my own important papers. I opened a new bank account at a different bank and started transferring small amounts of money into it every week. Then something weird happened. Walter's behavior completely changed. It happened overnight. One day he was distant and barely talking to me. The next day he was bringing me coffee in bed. He started doing dishes without being asked. He offered to take our son to the park so I could have time to myself. He told me I looked nice. He hugged me from behind while I was making dinner. At first, I thought maybe he somehow found out I was planning to leave, but he gave no indication that he knew anything. He just suddenly started acting like a completely different person. It threw me off completely. All my plans to leave suddenly seemed premature. I thought maybe he had realized on his own that he needed to change. I thought maybe our marriage could be saved after all, but something felt off about it. The way he was being nice felt performative, like he was following a script of what a good husband should do rather than actually being genuine. And sometimes I would catch him looking at me with this expression I could not read. It made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. This went on for 2 weeks. He kept up the good behavior. He even initiated physical intimacy a few times, but I found myself unable to relax into any of it. I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop. I kept thinking this was temporary, and he would go back to how he was before. Then one Saturday afternoon, everything made sense. Walter's younger brother came over to visit. His name is Lawrence, 28M, and he is the baby of their family. Lawrence has always been friendly toward me, but we were never particularly close. He usually came by to hang out with Walter and play video games or watch sports. This time, Lawrence said he actually wanted to talk to me. Walter was in the garage working on something. Lawrence and I sat in the kitchen. Our son was watching cartoons in the living room. Lawrence looked uncomfortable. He kept fidgeting with his coffee mug. Finally, he said he needed to tell me something. He said about 3 weeks ago, he had gone over to his parents' house for dinner. Walter was also there. After dinner, Lawrence overheard an argument between Walter and their father in the garage. Their father was apparently upset about something Walter's sister had told